Most people would never guess that a small brown penny from the early 1950s could be worth far more than 1 cent. But some 1952 Lincoln pennies with an S mint mark have surprised collectors with prices reaching hundreds, and in rare cases, thousands of dollars. And the most valuable ones often look ordinary at first glance. That's what makes this coin so fascinating. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1952 S mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that quietly passed through everyday pockets during post-war America, yet now holds serious interest among collectors. Whether you found one in a jar, inherited it from a relative, or are just curious about rare coins, this story might change how you look at the pennies in your hands. The 1952 S. Lincoln penny was produced in San Francisco, one of the main U.S. mint facilities responsible for making coins for circulation in the western United States. This coin features Abraham Lincoln on the front, just like all Lincoln cents since 1909, and the familiar wheat stalks on the back, which is why it's often called a wheat penny. By 1952, Americans had already been using the Lincoln cent design for over 40 years. It had become one of the most recognizable coins in U.S. history. But while the design stayed the same, the world around it had changed dramatically. In 1952, the United States was still adjusting to life after World War II. The country was growing fast. Families were moving into new homes, buying cars, starting businesses, and building what many now call the foundation of modern America. Coins like the 1952 S penny were part of everyday life during this time. They passed through diners, gas stations, grocery stores, and school lunch counters. The San Francisco Mint struck over 137 million pennies in 1952. That might sound like a huge number, and it is. But when you consider how many pennies are lost, damaged, or melted over time, surviving examples in high condition become much harder to find. And this is where the story gets interesting. The 1952 S. Lincoln penny is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper with a small amount of zinc and tin. This gives the coin its classic reddish-brown color, especially when it's well preserved. Over time, many of these coins darkened due to circulation and environmental exposure, but some remained bright and shiny, especially those that were saved early or stored carefully. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his head is the phrase, "In God we trust." In front of his face is the word "Liberty," and just behind his shoulder is the date, 1952. Below the date, if the coin was struck in San Francisco, you'll see a small S, mint mark. That tiny letter is what separates this coin from similar pennies made in Philadelphia or Denver. On the back, you'll see the words United States of America and 1 cent, framed by 2 wheat stalks. At the top, you'll find the phrase E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. This wheat design was used from 1909 to 1958 and is beloved by collectors for its classic look and historical feel. At first glance, the 1952 S penny looks almost identical to millions of others. But what makes it special is a combination of age, condition, mint mark, and the possibility of rare errors. While 1952 S pennies are not considered extremely rare in general circulation, high-grade examples are surprisingly hard to find. Many coins from this period were heavily used, meaning they show wear on Lincoln's face, flattening on the wheat stalks, and dull or uneven coloring. Coins that survived with sharp details, clean surfaces, and bright original color are far more valuable. Even more exciting are error coins. Some 1952 S pennies were struck with minting mistakes that collectors pay serious money for. These errors include off-center strikes, doubled dies, clipped planchets, and coins struck on defective metal blanks. One of the most sought-after errors is a doubled die, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially on the date or lettering. These errors happen during the die-making process and are not caused by damage after the coin leaves the mint. True doubled die coins are rare, and when found on a 1952 S penny, they can dramatically increase its value. Another valuable variety includes coins with repunched mint marks, where the S appears doubled or slightly offset. In the early 1950s, mint marks were punched into the dies by hand, which sometimes resulted in visible doubling. Collectors love these subtle details because they tell a story about how coins were made before modern automation. So, why is the 1952 S penny valuable? In average circulated condition, a 1952 S penny might only be worth a few cents more than face value. But once condition improves, value rises quickly. A well-preserved, uncirculated example can sell for several dollars. In higher grades, prices climb into the tens and even hundreds. Some top-grade examples graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC have sold for several $100s at auction, and rare error varieties can go much higher, depending on the type and severity of the mistake. In one auction, a high-grade 1952 S penny graded MS67 red sold for over $1,000. That's more than 100,000 times its original face value. Other near-perfect examples regularly sell in the $200 to $500 range, especially when they show strong original red color and flawless surfaces. Error coins can bring even more excitement. A dramatic off-center strike might sell for hundreds. A strong double die example could fetch even more, depending on how visible the doubling is. And coins with unusual metal flaws or striking errors can draw intense interest from collectors who specialize in mint mistakes. So how do you know if the 1952 S penny you found is real, valuable, or just a common circulated example? First, check the date and mint mark. The date should clearly read 1952, and just below it, slightly to the right, you should see a small S. If there's no mint mark, the coin was made in Philadelphia. If there's a D, it came from Denver. Only the San Francisco coins carry the S next. Look at the overall condition. Is Lincoln's face sharp and detailed? Are the wheat stalks on the back well defined? Is the surface smooth, or does it show heavy scratches and wear? Coins with less wear are generally worth more. Then check the color. Original copper pennies often show red, red-brown, or brown coloring. Bright red coins that still retain their mint luster are the most valuable, especially in high grades. But even brown coins can be valuable if they're well preserved and free of major damage. To spot possible errors, use a magnifying glass or coin loop. Look closely at the date and lettering for doubling. Check the edges for unusual cuts or shapes. Examine the mint mark to see if it looks doubled or misaligned. If something looks unusual, it might be worth having the coin professionally examined. Be cautious of fakes or altered coins. Some people add fake mint marks to common pennies to make them look more valuable. On real coins, the mint mark should look natural and consistent with the rest of the design. Added mint marks often look uneven, too sharp, or slightly raised in an unnatural way. If you're unsure, a professional coin dealer or grading service can help confirm authenticity. One surprising fact about the 1952 S penny is how difficult it is to find in truly perfect condition. While millions were made, most were heavily circulated during the booming economy of the 1950s. Unlike earlier wheat pennies from the early 1900s, fewer people saved coins from this era because they didn't yet think of them as collectibles. As a result, high-grade survivors are much scarcer than the original mintage numbers suggest. Another interesting detail is that the San Francisco Mint was known for producing coins with slightly softer strikes during this period. This means some details, especially in Lincoln's hair and the wheat stalks, may appear less sharp even on coins that were never circulated. That makes fully detailed examples especially desirable among collectors. Here's another fun fact. The 1952 S penny was made during the final decade of the wheat cent design. Just 6 years later, in 1958, the wheat reverse would be replaced by the Lincoln Memorial design. That means the 1952 S penny represents one of the last chapters of a beloved American coin style that lasted nearly 50 years. Collectors love this coin today not because it's flashy or famous, but because it represents a quiet moment in American history. It's a coin from a time of rebuilding, growth, and optimism. It passed through the hands of factory workers, shopkeepers, students, and families building new lives in post-war America. For collectors, the 1952 S penny offers something for everyone. Beginners can find affordable examples and enjoy the history behind them. Advanced collectors hunt for top-grade coins, rare errors, and unique varieties. And treasure hunters love the idea that something so small and ordinary could be hiding unexpected value. It also serves as a reminder that not all valuable coins look old or rare at first glance. Some of the most interesting discoveries come from common-looking coins that people overlook every day. A penny that once bought a piece of candy might now be worth enough to cover a nice dinner, a utility bill, or even more, depending on its condition and rarity. If you have a jar of old coins at home, the 1952 S penny is definitely one worth checking for. Look closely at the date, the mint mark, and the condition. You might not find a $1,000 coin, but you could find something far more interesting than you expected. And even if your coin turns out to be common, you'll still be holding a small piece of American history, a coin that traveled through a nation finding its footing in the modern world, a coin that connected everyday people through commerce, culture, and shared experience. The next time you see a penny, don't just think of it as spare change. Think of it as a storyteller, because sometimes the quietest coins have the most surprising stories to tell. And who knows? The next 1952 S penny you come across might not just be a coin. It might be a hidden piece of history waiting to be rediscovered. Have you ever checked the loose pennies in your drawer and wondered if one of them might secretly be worth far more than 1 cent? Because today's coin looks completely ordinary, yet certain examples of it have sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And the most surprising part is that millions of people may already own one without knowing it. Today, we're exploring the 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a small copper coin from the middle of America's post-war boom that quietly became one of the most interesting pennies of the 20th century. At first glance, this coin looks just like countless other Lincoln cents. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile face is right on the front, and on the back you'll find two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent. It feels simple, ordinary, almost boring. But behind this humble design is a story of history, craftsmanship, and hidden value that continues to excite collectors nearly 70 years later. Let's start by stepping back into the year 1956. America was in the middle of a powerful transformation. The country was booming after World War II. Suburbs were expanding. Television sets were entering homes. Rock and roll was changing music forever. Gas was cheap. Families were optimistic, and pennies still mattered not just as spare change but as real buying power. You could buy candy, newspapers, or small toys with a few coins, and copper cents passed through millions of hands every day. In 1956, the United States Mint struck over 1 billion Lincoln pennies. Most of them were made in Philadelphia, and those coins carried no mint mark, which is why we call them no mint mark cents. Unlike coins made in Denver or San Francisco, Philadelphia coins didn't use a letter under the date at that time. So if your 1956 penny has no letter beneath the year, that means it came from the Philadelphia Mint. These pennies were part of the famous Wheat Cent series, which began in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. It was the first time a real person appeared on a regular U.S. coin. Before that, coins mostly showed symbolic figures like Lady Liberty. The Lincoln cent was meant to represent honesty, unity, and American ideals, values that felt especially important in the years after the war. The man who designed the coin was Victor David Brenner, a Lithuanian-born sculptor who immigrated to the United States. His portrait of Lincoln is still used today, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. On the back, Brenner placed two wheat ears, symbolizing prosperity and growth. That's why collectors call these coins wheat pennies. Now let's talk about what makes the 1956 no-mint mark penny special. First, the metal. These coins are made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. That gives them their warm reddish color when new and a deeper brown tone as they age. Unlike modern pennies, which are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating, these older coins are solid copper. That alone makes them interesting to many collectors and even valuable to metal enthusiasts. Second, the strike quality. The Philadelphia Mint was producing massive numbers of coins in the 1950s, and while most were well-made, some coins came out with minor flaws. These flaws weren't intentional, but today they can make a huge difference in value. Some 1956 pennies show doubled lettering, especially in the words Liberty or In God We Trust. Others show off-center strikes, missing letters, or unusual spacing. These errors are rare, but when they appear, collectors take notice. One of the most famous types is the 1956 doubled die obverse penny. On these coins, parts of the design appear doubled, especially the date and lettering. This happened when the die used to strike the coin was misaligned during production. The result is subtle but visible to the trained eye and incredibly desirable. Now, let's talk about value, because this is where things get really interesting. Most 1956 no-mint mark pennies that circulated heavily are worth between 2 and 5 cents today, mainly because of their copper content and collectible appeal. Coins in better condition, especially those that still show red color from the original mint strike, can be worth much more. A 1956 penny in uncirculated condition, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, can sell for $10 to $40 depending on quality. But coins graded in top condition, with sharp details and full mint luster, have sold for hundreds. Now here's the exciting part. High-grade 1956 pennies with strong red color and nowhere have sold at major auctions for $1,000 or more. And rare error varieties, especially doubled die examples, can bring anywhere from several $100s to several $1,000s depending on condition and clarity of the error. In one well-known auction, a near-perfect 1956 Lincoln penny graded by a professional service sold for over $2,000. Another example with a strong doubling error sold for even more. These aren't everyday finds, but they prove something important. Even common-looking pennies can become extraordinary under the right conditions. So how can you tell if you have a valuable one? First, look at the date. It should read 1956 with no letter beneath it. If there's no D or S under the year, that means it came from Philadelphia. Next, check the color. Coins that are bright red or red-brown usually carry more value than dull brown ones. That red color means the coin hasn't been heavily exposed to air or handling. Then look closely at the lettering. Use a magnifying glass or your phone camera. Check Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. If the letters look doubled or shadowed, you might have a doubled die coin. Also examine the rim and shape. If the design looks off-center, uneven, or missing parts of letters, that could indicate a mint error, and errors often raise value significantly. One important thing to know is that genuine U.S. pennies are rarely counterfeited because their face value is so low. But altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify dates or add fake doubling. That's why serious collectors rely on professional grading services like PCGS or NGC to authenticate and grade valuable coins. Never clean your coin. Cleaning can remove original surface material and damage its value permanently. Even wiping it gently can reduce its worth. If you think you have something special, the best move is to leave it exactly as it is. Now let's talk about some fun and surprising facts about the 1956 penny. In 1956, Elvis Presley released Heartbreak Hotel. Dwight Eisenhower was president. The average American home cost about $12,000. A gallon of gas was around 22 cents. And while most people were focused on cars, televisions, and modern life, billions of copper pennies quietly flowed through the economy, including the ones collectors now chase decades later. Another interesting detail is that the wheat penny design would only last 3 more years. In 1959, the reverse design was changed to the Lincoln Memorial to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. That makes the 1956 penny part of the final chapter of the wheat cent era, something collectors care deeply about. It's also one of the last fully copper pennies before rising metal costs would eventually force the mint to change compositions in later decades. So when you hold a 1956 penny, you're holding a small piece of American industrial and economic history. Collectors love this coin not just because of potential value, but because it represents a perfect balance between accessibility and rarity. Millions were made, so people can realistically find one. But top-condition examples and error varieties are genuinely scarce, making them exciting to hunt. For beginner collectors, the 1956 penny is often a gateway coin, easy to recognize, affordable in most grades, and full of educational value. For advanced collectors, it's a challenge to find in flawless condition or with dramatic mint errors. There's something powerful about knowing that a coin you might find in a jar, drawer, or inherited collection could connect you to another era. Someone in 1956 might have used that exact penny to buy candy, tip a newspaper boy, or drop into a jukebox. And now, decades later, it could sit in your hand, no longer just spare change, but a collectible piece of history. And here's something many people don't realize. Coin values don't only come from rarity. They come from demand, condition, story, and emotional connection. The 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny sits at the crossroads of all four. It's old enough to feel historical, common enough to be findable, and rare enough in high grades to be exciting. That's why collectors continue to search rolls of pennies, estate collections, and inherited jars, hoping to uncover one of these in pristine condition or with a hidden error. So if you're curious, here's a simple challenge. Grab a handful of old pennies and start looking. Check the dates, look for wheat backs, and if you see 1956 with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Examine it closely. You might just be holding something far more interesting than 1 cent. Because the truth is, history doesn't always sit in museums or vaults. Sometimes it hides in plain sight in pockets, drawers, and jars, waiting for someone to notice. The 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's ordinary looking. But when you understand the story behind it, that small copper coin becomes something else entirely. A symbol of America's past, a collector's treasure, and a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry remarkable stories. And who knows, the next time you hear the clink of loose change, one of those pennies might not just be spare change at all. It might be a piece of history, quietly waiting to be discovered. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket and realizing it could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Most people would laugh that off. But for collectors, one ordinary-looking coin from 1969, struck at the Denver Mint, has quietly become one of the most interesting Lincoln cents in American history. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1969 Lincoln penny, a coin that proves sometimes the smallest change can carry the biggest surprises. This coin is officially called the 1969 Lincoln Memorial Cent. It's a 1-cent coin made in the United States, featuring President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. The small letter D beneath the date tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint in Colorado. On the surface, it looks just like millions of other pennies Americans handled every day. But once you learn its story, details, and collector appeal, you'll never look at it the same way again. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1969. The United States was going through a time of major change. The country had just landed on the moon, the Vietnam War was ongoing, and American society was shifting in powerful ways. At the same time, everyday commerce still depended heavily on coins, especially pennies, which were used constantly for purchases, vending machines, and exact change. In 1959, the U.S. Mint had redesigned the penny to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's 150th birthday, replacing the wheat ears on the back with the Lincoln Memorial. By 1969, this design had been in use for a decade, and Americans were very familiar with it. The Denver Mint was producing massive quantities of cents to keep up with demand. In fact, more than 4 billion Lincoln pennies were struck in Denver in 1969 alone. That sounds like a huge number, and it is. But as collectors know, rarity isn't always about how many were made. It's about how many survive in top condition and whether any special varieties or errors exist. The 1969 D penny was made of the standard bronze composition used at the time, which was about 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gave the coin its familiar reddish-brown color when new. Over time, depending on how it was stored or circulated, these pennies can appear bright red, reddish-brown, or deep brown. Collectors care a lot about this color because it affects value, sometimes dramatically. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right, a design created by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and to the right of his face is the date, 1969, with the small D mint mark just below it. Along the top edge, you'll see "In God We Trust." On the back, the Lincoln Memorial Building is centered, with United States of America along the top, EPLURIBUS above the memorial, and 1 cent along the bottom. At first glance, there's nothing unusual about this design. But when collectors study coins closely, tiny differences in strikes, details, and surfaces can make a big difference. And that's where the 1969 D penny becomes especially interesting. Most 1969 D pennies are common in worn condition. You'll still find them in circulation today, mixed in with other older coins, usually worth just 1 cent. But in uncirculated condition, especially with strong detail and original red color, these coins become much scarcer. That's because most were used heavily, tossed into jars, pockets, and cash registers, and exposed to air, moisture, and wear. Only a small percentage survived in pristine condition, untouched by circulation. Collectors grade coins on a scale that measures how much wear and damage they show. At the very top of that scale are coins that look almost exactly as they did when they left the mint. These are the ones that can bring serious money. For the 1969 D penny, the difference between a worn example and a high-grade one can be hundreds, or even thousands, of dollars. Another reason collectors pay attention to this coin is because of the era it was made in. The late 1960s were a time of major transition in U.S. coinage. Silver had been removed from dimes and quarters just a few years earlier, and the mint was under pressure to produce large quantities of coins quickly and efficiently. That sometimes led to weaker strikes, minor design flaws, and occasional errors. While the most famous error of 1969 is actually the 1969's double die from San Francisco, the Denver issues from that year still attract attention for quality variations and strike characteristics. Some 1969 D pennies show unusually strong details, especially in Lincoln's hair and beard, and sharp lines in the Lincoln Memorial columns. These well-struck examples are highly desirable. Others show weak strikes or blurred details, making top-quality coins even harder to find. This uneven quality is part of what drives collector interest today. Now let's talk about value, because that's what most people are curious about. In everyday circulated condition, A 1969 D penny is usually worth only its face value of 1 cent. But once you move into uncirculated territory, things change quickly. A bright red, sharply struck example can be worth several dollars, and in the highest certified grades, prices can jump dramatically. There have been auction sales where top-grade 1969 D pennies sold for hundreds of dollars, and in some cases, over $1,000. These aren't average coins pulled from pocket change. These are carefully preserved examples, often stored in mint sets or protected in coin holders for decades. The combination of bright original color, flawless surfaces, and strong strike can push values much higher than most people expect from a penny. Collectors love coins that combine large mintages with low survival rates in top condition. The 1969 D penny fits that pattern perfectly. Billions were made, but very few survived in pristine, high-grade condition. That makes the best examples surprisingly rare. One of the most exciting things about collecting coins like this is the hunt. People still search rolls of pennies from banks, jars of old change, and inherited collections hoping to find a hidden gem. And sometimes they succeed. Finding a high-grade 1969 D penny in an old roll or set can feel like discovering a small piece of buried treasure. But with value comes the risk of counterfeits and altered coins. While the 1969 D penny itself isn't as heavily faked as some ultra-rare coins, it's still important to know how to identify a genuine example, especially if you think you've found something special. First, always look for the mint mark. On a genuine 1969 D penny, the D should appear below the date, just to the right of Lincoln's bust. It should look clean, well-shaped, and consistent with other Denver mint marks from the late 1960s. Added or altered mint marks often look crooked, uneven, or placed too close or too far from the date. Next, examine the surfaces of the coin. Original coins usually have smooth, natural-looking texture and color, even if they've toned over time. Artificially altered coins may show strange shine, unnatural color, or signs of polishing or cleaning. Cleaning can actually reduce a coin's value significantly, even if the coin itself is rare. Weight is another useful clue. A genuine 1969 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams, since it's made mostly of copper. A noticeably lighter or heavier coin could indicate damage, wear, or even a fake. Serious collectors often use digital scales and magnifying glasses to inspect coins carefully. If you believe you have a high-grade or unusual example, the best step is to have it evaluated by a professional coin grading service. These companies authenticate, grade, and encapsulate coins in protective holders, giving buyers and sellers confidence in what they're dealing with. Now let's look at some real-world examples of what this coin has sold for. While prices change over time depending on market demand, certified high-grade 1969 D pennies have sold at major auctions for several $100s. In exceptional cases, especially for coins with perfect surfaces and strong color, prices have reached well over $1,000. That's a remarkable return for a coin that originally cost just 1 cent. What's interesting is that these prices don't come from hype or gimmicks. They come from long-term collector demand, limited supply of top-grade examples, and the steady popularity of Lincoln cents as a collecting series. The Lincoln penny is one of the most widely collected coins in the world, and many people try to build complete sets by date and mint mark. That means even coins that seem common at first glance can become highly desirable in the right condition. The 1969 D penny also benefits from its place in history. Coins from the late 1960s capture a moment when American culture, technology, and society were changing rapidly. Holding a penny from that era is like holding a small time capsule. It passed through the hands of people living through moon landings, historic protests, and major social shifts. That emotional connection adds to the coin's appeal. Here's a fun fact. In 1969, the The U.S. Mint produced more pennies than the entire population of the United States at the time. That means, in theory, every person could have had more than 10 brand new pennies that year. And yet, decades later, finding one in perfect condition is surprisingly difficult. That contrast between massive production and limited survival in top shape is part of what makes this coin so fascinating. Another surprising detail is how much color matters. Two 1969 D pennies with the same design and date can have wildly different values simply because one is bright red and the other is brown. Red coins show little to no oxidation and look almost exactly as they did when struck. These are much harder to find after decades of exposure to air and handling, which is why collectors pay a premium for them. Collectors also enjoy studying tiny differences in strikes and surfaces. Some 1969 D pennies show particularly strong detail in Lincoln's hair, especially above the ear and along the back of the head. Others show crisp lines in the columns of the Lincoln Memorial. These subtle qualities can make one coin stand out from thousands of others, even to the trained eye. Another interesting aspect of this coin is how accessible it still is. Unlike ultra-rare coins that cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, the 1969 D penny can still be found in circulation, in old coin jars, and in inexpensive collections. That makes it an exciting target for beginner collectors and experienced hobbyists alike. Anyone can search for one, and anyone can hope to find a high-quality example. This accessibility also keeps interest alive. Every time someone checks their change and spots a 1969 D penny, there's a moment of curiosity. Is this one special? Is it in great condition? Could it be worth more than face value? That sense of possibility is at the heart of coin collecting. Collectors today love the 1969 D penny because it represents the idea that value isn't always obvious. It looks ordinary, but in the right condition it becomes extraordinary. It teaches patience, attention to detail, and the joy of discovery. It also connects people to history in a simple, tangible way. You're not just holding a coin. You're holding something that's traveled through time, commerce, and countless human stories. For some collectors, this coin is part of a complete Lincoln cent collection, filling a specific date and mint mark slot. For others, it's an example of how modern-era coins can still offer surprises. And for beginners, it's often one of the first coins that shows them how condition and preservation can transform something common into something special. As you look through your own change, jars, or inherited collections, keep an eye out for that small D beneath the date 1969. Check the surfaces, the color, and the details. You might be holding a penny that's worth far more than you expect. And even if it's not a high-grade example, it's still a piece of American history that's traveled more than half a century to reach your hand. The story of the 1969 D Lincoln penny reminds us that value isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. So the next time you hear the clink of coins in your pocket or the bottom of a drawer, take a closer look. One of those pennies just might have a story worth telling. And who knows? The next great discovery in American coin collecting might not come from a museum or an auction house. It might come from your own change. Most people walk past pennies on the ground without even thinking twice. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny from 1975 could be hiding a story far bigger than its 1-cent face value? A story tied to American history, rare mistakes, and the thrill of discovering something valuable in your own pocket change. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny coin and why collectors are still searching for it nearly 50 years later. The 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint in Philadelphia. When a penny has no mint mark, it usually means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use mint marks on cents during this era. At first glance, this coin looks just like millions of others made that year. It features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But behind that familiar design is a fascinating story of American coinage, unexpected errors, and collector demand that continues today. To understand this coin, we have to step back into the mid-1970s. America was recovering from the Vietnam War, facing inflation, and adjusting to major economic changes. The price of copper was rising sharply, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to keep producing affordable coins while managing metal costs. Just a few years earlier, in 1974, copper prices had surged so high that some people were melting pennies for their metal value. That forced the government to rethink how coins were made. In 1975, the Mint continued producing Lincoln cents using a bronze alloy made mostly of copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc. These pennies weighed about 3.11 grams and had the familiar reddish-brown tone many people associate with older cents. Over 7 billion pennies were struck that year, most of them at the Philadelphia Mint with no mint mark. So on paper, this seems like a very common coin. But in the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't always about how many were made. Sometimes, it's about how many survived in top condition or whether unusual errors slipped through the minting process. The design of the 1975 penny is part of the Lincoln Memorial Series, which ran from 1959 to 2008. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top, Liberty on the left, and the date on the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly in the center, with United States of America at the top, E pluribus unum above the memorial, and 1 cent at the bottom. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making this one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. Most 1975 no-mint mark pennies are circulated and worn, and in that condition, they're usually worth just a few cents. But some examples stand out, especially those that survived in nearly perfect condition or those that were struck with errors. These are the coins that collectors hunt for, and these are the coins that can be worth far more than 1 cent. One of the biggest factors that increases value is condition. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect, flawless coin. A 1975 no-mint mark penny in average circulated condition might be worth only 1 to 3 cents. But in uncirculated condition, especially with full original mint luster, values can rise significantly. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on the exact grade and eye appeal. But what really drives excitement around the 1975 no-mint mark penny is the possibility of errors. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process, and these mistakes can turn an ordinary coin into a collector's treasure. One well-known error type is the off-center strike, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin blank, leaving part of the coin blank and part of the design missing. These can range from slightly off-center to dramatically misaligned, and the more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin tends to be. Another popular error is the double die. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during its creation, causing parts of the design, such as the date or lettering, to appear doubled. While no major double die variety for the 1975 penny is as famous as the legendary 1955 double die, collectors have identified minor double dies and other varieties that still attract attention and value. There are also clipped planchets, where a piece of the metal blank is missing, usually because the blanks were punched too closely together from the metal strip. These coins have curved or straight missing sections and are instantly recognizable once you know what to look for. Other errors include broad strikes, where the coin spreads wider than normal because it wasn't properly contained during striking, and die cracks, where cracks in the die leave raised lines on the coin's surface. So how valuable can a 1975 no-mint mark penny really be? Let's talk real-world examples. While most are common, high-grade uncirculated coins have sold for impressive amounts. In professional auctions, some top-grade examples graded MS67 or higher have sold for several $100s. That's a huge return for a coin that originally cost just 1 cent. Error coins can go even higher, depending on the type and severity of the error. A 1975 penny with a strong off-center strike or a dramatic clipped planchet can sell anywhere from $50 to several $100s. Some rare combinations of errors or coins with exceptional visual appeal have sold for even more. These aren't everyday finds, but they prove that valuable treasures can still exist in ordinary change. Of course, with valuable coins comes the risk of counterfeits and altered coins. So how can you tell if your 1975 no-mint mark penny is real and potentially valuable? The first step is to examine the coin carefully. A genuine 1975 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams and be made of a copper-based alloy. If it feels unusually light, heavy, or the wrong color, that could be a red flag. Next, look closely at the date and lettering. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Real mint errors will look natural and consistent with how coins are made. For example, genuine doubled dies show doubling that is part of the metal itself, not something scratched or added later. Altered coins often show signs of tooling, filing, or unnatural marks around the date or letters. Also, pay attention to the edge. A genuine penny should have a smooth edge, not readed like a dime or quarter. Any strange markings along the edge could indicate damage or tampering. If you think you've found something special, the best step is to have the coin evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or sent to a professional grading service. These experts can confirm authenticity and assign an official grade, which can dramatically affect the coin's value. One surprising fact about the 1975 penny is how many people unknowingly spend potentially valuable coins. Because these pennies look so ordinary, most people never stop to inspect them. Many collectors today started their hobby by finding an unusual coin in pocket change, and the 1975 penny is exactly the kind of coin that can spark that journey. It reminds us that history isn't always locked behind museum glass. Sometimes, it's sitting quietly in a jar on your dresser. Another fun detail is how the Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse makes this coin unique in American history. It's one of the few times a U.S. coin shows the same person on both sides. If you look closely at the memorial, you'll see a tiny seated figure of Lincoln between the columns. That design choice was meant to honor Lincoln's legacy during the centennial of his birth in 1959, and it remained on pennies for nearly 50 years. Collectors also love the 1975 no-mint mark penny because it represents the final years of the traditional bronze cent before the U.S. Mint switched to copper-plated zinc pennies in 1982. These older bronze cents feel heavier, sound different when dropped, and have a warmer color that many collectors prefer. For some, they represent a more classic era of American coinage. There's also something deeply satisfying about searching for coins from this period. Unlike rare gold coins locked away in vaults, Lincoln cents from the 1970s are still accessible. You can find them in rolls from the bank, in old collections, or even in loose change. That accessibility makes the hunt exciting. You never know when an ordinary-looking penny might turn out to be something special. Collectors today appreciate the 1975 no-mint mark penny not just for its potential value, but for what it represents. It's a snapshot of America during a time of change, when the country was navigating economic challenges and adapting its coinage to survive rising metal costs. It's also a reminder that even mass-produced objects can hold stories, craftsmanship, and surprises beneath the surface. And then there's the emotional side of collecting. Many people inherit jars of pennies from parents or grandparents. Others remember sorting through coins as children, hoping to find something rare. The 1975 penny often appears in these collections, and while most will be common, the possibility that one might be exceptional keeps collectors searching. That sense of discovery is at the heart of coin collecting. So the next time you see a 1975 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check its condition. Look for unusual features. You might be holding a coin that has traveled through decades of American history, passed through countless hands, and survived in better shape than most. Or you might even have an error coin that escaped the mint unnoticed and waited years for someone to recognize its uniqueness. In the end, the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny teaches us an important lesson. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, disguised as something ordinary. Whether you're a serious collector or someone who just enjoys a good story, this humble penny offers both history and possibility. So keep your eyes open the next time you check your change. Because that quiet little copper coin might not just be worth a cent, it might be worth a story. And sometimes, stories are worth far more than money. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that looks ordinary, but could be hiding a story connected to America's 200th birthday. Most people would never give it a second glance. But the 1976 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny isn't just spare change. It's a quiet witness to one of the most patriotic years in U.S. history, and for collectors, it holds surprising interest that goes far beyond its face value. Today, we're diving into the true story of the 1976 D Lincoln penny. What it is, where it came from, what makes it special, and why people still search through jars of old coins hoping to find one in exceptional condition. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a copper penny the same way again. The 1976 D Lincoln penny was made at the Denver Mint, one of the main U.S. mint facilities responsible for producing coins for circulation across the western United States. The D mint mark, found just below the date on the front of the coin, tells us exactly where it was struck. This penny features the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been used since 1909, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, which appeared on pennies from 1959 through 2008. At first glance, the 1976 D penny looks just like millions of other Lincoln cents. But behind that simple design is a fascinating story connected to America's bicentennial celebration, a turning point in U.S. coinage materials, and a collector market that still values this coin today, especially in top condition. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the mid-1970s. The United States was preparing to celebrate its 200th anniversary in 1976. The bicentennial was a nationwide event, marked by parades, fireworks, special stamps, and even redesigned coins. Quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins were given special bicentennial designs, but the penny was not changed. Instead, it kept the traditional Lincoln Memorial design. Still, the year itself gave every 1976 dated coin special meaning. Every penny minted that year became a small piece of American history, circulating through stores, pockets, and piggy banks during a time of national pride and reflection. The Denver Mint struck over 4 billion pennies in 1976, making it one of the highest mintage Lincoln cent years ever. That massive production means these coins are common in circulation, but common doesn't always mean uninteresting, and it definitely doesn't mean worthless. The 1976 D Lincoln penny was made from a copper-based alloy of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This was the same metal composition used for most pennies from 1962 through part of 1982. Because of this high copper content, many people today call these copper pennies. And their metal alone is technically worth more than 1 cent, though melting them is illegal. On the front of the coin, Abraham Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top edge, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the D Mint mark to the right. The design was originally created by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909 and has become one of the most recognizable portraits in American coinage. On the back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside, making this one of the few U.S. coins to feature the same person on both sides. Along the top are the words United States of America, at the bottom 1 cent, and across the center E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one. While the design itself wasn't unique to 1976, the condition and quality of individual coins can vary widely, and that's where collector interest begins. Now, you might be wondering, if billions were made, how could any 1976 D penny be valuable? The answer lies in condition, rarity of errors, and collector demand for top-quality examples. Most 1976 D pennies that circulated through everyday use are worth just 1 cent. Some might be worth 2 or 3 cents because of their copper content, but coins that were never used, especially those that remain in perfect or near-perfect condition, can be worth much more. Collectors call these uncirculated coins, and the best of the best are graded by professional services. In coin grading, tiny differences matter. A coin with sharp details, full original luster, and no visible marks can receive a very high grade. For modern coins like the 1976 D penny, grades of MS67 or higher are considered exceptional. And those top-grade coins are surprisingly rare, because even coins straight from mint bags often received small scratches and contact marks during handling. There's another reason collectors seek out 1976 D pennies: mint errors. These are coins that were struck incorrectly during the minting process, creating unusual features that make them rare and desirable. Some known error types for this year include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly centered on the coin; double strikes, where the coin was struck more than once by the dies; and die cracks, where cracks in the metal dies leave raised lines on the coin's surface. There are also double die varieties, where parts of the lettering or numbers appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. While true double die 1976 D pennies are rare, collectors constantly search for them. Now let's talk about real-world value. In average circulated condition, a 1976 D penny is usually worth face value. In uncirculated condition, it might sell for anywhere from 10 cents to a few dollars, depending on its appearance. But the real excitement comes at the top end of the grading scale. High-grade examples certified by professional grading companies have sold for impressive prices at auction. Some 1976 D pennies graded MS67 red have sold for over $100, and in a few cases, exceptional specimens graded MS68 red have reached several $100s. These prices might surprise people who think modern pennies can't be valuable, but they show how much collectors are willing to pay for perfection. Error coins can sell for even more. A dramatic off-center strike or a strong double die variety can bring anywhere from $50 to several $100s, depending on how clear and visually appealing the error is. These coins are especially exciting because they are true accidents of history, created unintentionally and caught only by chance. So how do you identify a genuine 1976 D Lincoln penny, and how do you know if it might be worth more than 1 cent? First, look at the date. It should read 1976. Then look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a small D, that means it was minted in Denver. No mint mark would mean it was made in Philadelphia, and an S would mean San Francisco. Next, check the weight. A genuine copper 1976 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significantly different weight could suggest damage, alteration, or in rare cases, a wrong metal error, though those are extremely rare. Look closely at the design details. Lincoln's hair and beard should show clear lines. The lettering should be sharp and readable. On higher quality coins, the Lincoln Memorial on the back should show distinct columns and steps. To spot possible errors, use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look for doubling on the date or letters, unusual lines, missing parts of the design, or areas where the strike seems weak or off-center. If something looks strange, it doesn't automatically mean it's valuable, but it might be worth having a knowledgeable collector or coin shop take a look. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins or modifying mint marks. A genuine mint error usually looks natural and consistent with how coins are struck, while altered coins often show tool marks or unnatural shapes. When in doubt, professional grading services can authenticate and certify a coin. Now let's explore some fun and surprising facts about the 1976 D penny. First, this penny was minted during the same year that Americans were celebrating the bicentennial. But unlike the quarter, half-dollar and dollar coins, it never received a special design. That makes it one of the few circulating coins of 1976 that doesn't visually advertise the bicentennial, even though it was part of that historic year. Second, because these pennies were made mostly of copper, many people today save them in jars or boxes, believing they might be valuable someday just for their metal content. While melting them isn't legal, this has still created a quiet trend of copper penny hoarding among some collectors and investors. Third, the Lincoln Memorial design on the back was nearing the end of its long run in 1976. It would remain in use until 2008, but today it's already considered a classic design of the late 20th century. For younger collectors, these pennies represent a piece of history from before the modern shield reverse was introduced. And here's a detail many people miss. If you look closely at the Lincoln Memorial, you can see Lincoln seated inside, making this the first U.S. coin to show the same person on both sides. That small design choice makes every Lincoln Memorial cent, including the 1976 D, unique in American coinage history. So why do collectors still love the 1976 D Lincoln penny today? Part of the appeal is nostalgia. For many Americans, this coin brings back memories of childhood, pocket change, and simpler times. It's a reminder of the bicentennial era, when the country paused to reflect on its past and future. Another reason is accessibility. Unlike rare gold coins or early American cents that can cost thousands of dollars, the 1976 D penny is affordable and easy to find. This makes it a perfect entry point for new collectors who want to learn about grading, mint marks, and varieties without spending a lot of money. Collectors also enjoy the challenge of finding high-grade examples. Because so many of these coins were used in everyday circulation, truly pristine specimens are surprisingly scarce. Searching through rolls of pennies or old collections in hopes of finding a sharp, bright red 1976 D cent can feel like a treasure hunt, even if the odds are slim. And then there's the excitement of errors. Knowing that a rare mistake could be hiding in a pile of ordinary coins keeps collectors searching. Every off-center strike, doubled die, or unusual flaw tells a story about how coins were made and how something went slightly wrong at just the right moment. The 1976 D Lincoln penny may not be the rarest coin in American history, and it may not make anyone instantly rich, but it represents something deeper. It's a small, everyday object tied to a milestone year in the life of a nation. It's proof that even the most ordinary-looking coins can carry history, craftsmanship, and hidden value. So the next time you see a penny dated 1976 with a small D beneath the date, don't dismiss it as just spare change. Take a moment to look closer. Check its condition. Look for unusual details. You might be holding a tiny time capsule from America's bicentennial year, or maybe even a high-grade or error coin that collectors would love to own. Sometimes, the most fascinating treasures aren't locked in vaults or museums. They're hiding in plain sight, waiting quietly in pockets, drawers, and coin jars, just hoping someone takes a closer look. And that's what makes coins like the 1976 D. Lincoln penny so powerful. They remind us that history isn't always grand or dramatic. Sometimes, it fits in the palm of your hand and costs just 1 cent. What if the penny sitting in your pocket right now is worth far more than 1 cent, and you've never noticed it? Today, we're uncovering the surprising story behind the 1985 D. Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary, but in rare cases has shocked collectors with its hidden value. Most people have seen this coin. Many have spent it. Some may have thrown it into jars or drawers without a second thought. But the truth is, certain 1985 Denver Mint pennies are far more interesting than they appear, and a few have sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Let's explore what makes this penny special, how to recognize valuable examples, and why collectors are still searching for them today. The 1985 D. Lincoln penny was produced by the United States Mint in Denver during a year of economic stability and everyday commerce. In the mid-1980s, America was recovering from inflation in the previous decade, and the penny remained one of the most widely used coins in circulation. Millions of people handled these coins daily in grocery stores, gas stations, school cafeterias, and vending machines. The coin features the familiar image of President Abraham Lincoln on the front, first introduced in 1909 to mark the 100th anniversary of his birth. By 1985, Lincoln's portrait had already been in circulation for more than 75 years, making it the longest-running portrait on any U.S. coin. On the reverse, the coin displays the Lincoln Memorial, a design used from 1959 until 2008. Inside the building, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln, one of the smallest detailed engravings ever placed on a circulating U.S. coin. The D mint mark beneath the date tells us the coin was struck in Denver, Colorado. In 1985 alone, the Denver Mint produced over 5 billion Lincoln pennies, making this one of the most heavily minted coins in American history. That means most 1985 D pennies are still worth just 1 cent. But as we're about to see, not all of them are the same. Now let's talk about what this penny is made of, because that's part of its story. Before 1982, U.S. pennies were made mostly of copper. But rising metal prices made copper too expensive, so the mint switched to a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. By 1985, all pennies were struck in this copper-plated zinc composition, giving them a bright reddish color when new and a lighter weight compared to older copper coins. A standard 1985 D penny weighs about 2.5 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. On the front, Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date with the D mint mark on the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall in the center, surrounded by United States of America and 1 cent, with E pluribus unum above the building. At first glance, it looks like a perfectly normal penny, but collectors know that sometimes what matters most isn't the design, it's the mistakes. Some of the most valuable 1985 D pennies owe their worth to rare minting errors. These errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process, such as misaligned dies, double strikes, or metal planchet problems. Most errors are caught and destroyed at the mint, but a few slip into circulation, and those are the ones collectors chase. One of the most sought-after errors on 1985 D pennies is the double die obverse. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives a misaligned impression during its creation, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. On valuable examples, collectors see doubling in the date the word "Liberty" or the motto "In God We Trust." Instead of crisp single lettering, these areas appear thick, shadowed, or slightly offset. Another rare error involves off-center strikes, where the coin design is not properly centered on the blank. Some off-center pennies show only part of Lincoln's face or missing letters, And when the date and mint mark are still visible, these errors become especially desirable. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the coin's metal blank was improperly cut, resulting in a curved or straight missing section along the edge. These errors create instantly recognizable shapes and can significantly increase a coin's value. Even more unusual are wrong planchet errors, when a penny is accidentally struck on a blank meant for another coin, such as a dime or foreign coin. These weigh differently, sound different when dropped, and often appear silver-colored instead of copper. So why would anyone pay serious money for a penny from 1985 when billions exist? The answer is condition and rarity. Most 1985 D pennies in circulation are worn, scratched, or discolored, and those are only worth face value. But uncirculated examples, coins that were never used and still retain their original mint luster, can be worth significantly more, especially if they receive high grades from professional grading services. A standard 1985 D penny in average uncirculated condition might sell for a few cents to $1. But in top condition, graded MS67 or higher, prices rise quickly. Some of the finest known examples have sold for over $100, simply because so few survive in perfect condition after decades in circulation. Error coins take value to another level. Verified double-die 1985 D pennies have sold at auction for several $100s, depending on the strength and clarity of the doubling. Off-center strikes with strong visual appeal and visible dates have sold for $50 to $300 or more. Dramatic clipped planchets can bring similar prices. In rare cases, wrong planchet errors have crossed into the thousands, especially when authenticated and graded by major services. These coins aren't just mistakes, they're historical accidents preserved in metal. One particularly notable sale involved a 1985 D penny struck on a dime planchet, which sold for over $2,000 due to its rarity and condition. Another doubled die example with strong doubling in Liberty, and the date sold for several $100s after being professionally graded. These sales prove that while most 1985 D pennies are common, a few exceptional examples are anything but. So how do you tell if your coin is valuable or just another penny? Start by checking the date and mint mark. Make sure it reads 1985 with a small d beneath the date. Then examine the coin under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look closely at the words Liberty, In God We Trust, and the numbers in the date. If you see clear doubling, not just blurry edges or wear, you may have something worth investigating. True doubled dies show distinct separation between letters, not just thickness. Next, look at the shape of the coin. If its missing part of its edge appears oval instead of round or has an unusual curve, it may be a clipped planchet or off-center strike. Weigh the coin if possible. A normal 1985 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. Anything significantly lighter or heavier may indicate an error or wrong planchet. Check the color too. A normal penny should appear copper-toned. If your coin looks silvery or gray, and it's not just dirty, it could be something special. Avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning can damage the surface and reduce value instantly. If you suspect you've found something rare, the best step is to place it in a protective holder and consider having it evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Now let's talk about a few fun facts that make the 1985 D penny even more interesting. In 1985, the Lincoln cent was still one of the most widely produced coins in the world, with over 10 billion pennies struck across all U.S. mints that year. That means nearly every American alive at the time handled multiple 1985 pennies, often without realizing it. Despite being made mostly of zinc, these pennies still look copper because the outer layer is pure copper, thinner than a sheet of paper. If the plating wears through, the gray zinc core becomes visible, which is why some older pennies look oddly discolored today. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design contains Lincoln's statue between the columns. That makes Lincoln one of the only real people to appear twice on the same side of a U.S. coin, once as a portrait and once as a sculpture inside a building. Collectors also find the mid-1980s fascinating because this era represents a transitional time in coin production. The mint was refining automated striking systems, and some of the era coins from this period reflect early machine adjustments that would later be corrected. So why do collectors still care about the 1985 D penny today? Because coin collecting isn't just about rarity, it's about stories. Every coin is a tiny time capsule, preserving a moment in history when it was struck, spent, and saved. The 1985 D penny tells the story of everyday America, of coffee counters, newspaper machines, school lunches, and piggy banks. For some collectors, the excitement comes from searching rolls of pennies from the bank, knowing that among thousands of ordinary coins, there might be one rare error hiding in plain sight. For others, it's about assembling complete collections of Lincoln cents by year and mint mark, and finding the best possible example of each. And for many, it's the thrill of discovery, that moment when a coin you almost ignored turns out to be something special. The 1985 D penny also appeals to beginner collectors because it's accessible. You don't need to spend hundreds of dollars to start. You can search your own pocket change, old jars, or inherited collections. The possibility of finding something rare without spending much money makes this coin especially exciting. Even seasoned collectors appreciate high-grade examples, because finding a flawless coin from a year with billions of strikes is surprisingly difficult. Every scratch, bag mark, or handling mark lowers a coin's grade, and after decades of circulation, perfect survivors become scarce. As we reach the end of this story, here's the most important takeaway. Most 1985 D pennies are only worth 1 cent, but a small number, those with rare errors, unusual strikes, or exceptional condition, can be worth far more. Some have sold for hundreds. A few have reached into the thousands, and all of them remind us that value isn't always obvious at first glance. So the next time you see a penny dated 1985 with a small D beneath the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look, turn it under the light, study the letters, check the edges, because hidden among billions of ordinary coins, a few extraordinary ones are still out there waiting to be found. And who knows? The next rare 1985 D Lincoln penny might already be sitting quietly in your pocket, jar, or drawer, just waiting for someone to notice its story. Most people would walk right past this coin without a second thought. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But hidden inside millions of pocket change jars across America is a 1997 D Lincoln penny that could be far more important than anyone realizes, and in rare cases, worth far more than 1 cent. Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 1997 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny. Where it came from, why it was made, what makes certain examples valuable, and how collectors quietly search for hidden treasures hiding in plain sight. The 1997 D penny is a 1 cent coin struck at the Denver Mint in 1997. The small letter D beneath the year tells us it was minted in Denver, Colorado, one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in the United States. This penny features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design Americans had seen for decades. But sometimes, familiar designs hide the most unexpected stories. By 1997, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for nearly 90 years. The original Lincoln penny debuted in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure. Over time, the design evolved, but Lincoln remained, becoming one of the most recognizable faces in American history. The version made in 1997 continued the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, which had been used since 1959. This design shows the famous Washington, D.C. monument, and if you look closely, you can actually see Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, making it one of the few coins in the world where the same person appears twice on a single coin. In 1997, the U.S. Mint was producing enormous numbers of pennies to meet demand for everyday commerce. Billions were struck across different mints, including Philadelphia and Denver. The Denver Mint alone produced over 4 billion pennies that year. That massive number is part of what makes most 1997 D pennies common. But it's also what makes rare variations so exciting, because they slipped into circulation unnoticed among millions of identical coins. The metal composition of the 1997 D penny is copper-plated zinc. Since 1982, most Lincoln cents have been made this way, using a zinc core coated in thin copper. This change saved the government money compared to older solid copper pennies, which are now collectible simply because of their metal content. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date to the right. Beneath the date sits the small but powerful D mint mark, quietly identifying its origin. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial dominates the design, flanked by the words "United States of America" and "E pluribus unum," with 1 cent at the bottom. It's a familiar image, but collectors know that sometimes the smallest details make the biggest difference. At first glance, the 1997 D penny seems ordinary, but what transforms everyday coins into collectibles is often something unexpected: a minting error, an unusual surface, or a tiny design anomaly that escaped quality control. One of the most sought-after versions of the 1997 D penny is the double die error. This happens when the coin's design is accidentally stamped twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect in the letters or numbers. On some 1997 D pennies, collectors have discovered noticeable doubling in areas like "Liberty," "In God We Trust," or the date. These are not scratches or damage, they are mistakes created during the minting process itself. Another valuable variety involves off-center strikes. This happens when the blank coin isn't properly aligned during stamping, causing part of the design to appear shifted, cut off, or incomplete. These coins look unusual and immediately stand out to trained collectors. The more dramatic and centered the off-strike, the more valuable the coin can be. There are also examples of die cracks and die breaks, lines or raised areas caused by cracks in the metal dies used to strike coins. These errors can create dramatic shapes across Lincoln's face or across the memorial building, making each coin unique. Some collectors actively hunt for these varieties because no two are ever exactly alike. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the collar that normally gives it its edge, resulting in a wider than normal coin with a flattened rim. These coins feel different in the hand and instantly grab attention. Now, here's where things get interesting. While most 1997 D pennies are worth just 1 cent in circulation, error coins and high-grade examples can sell for far more, sometimes shockingly more, than most people would expect. In circulated condition, a normal 1997 D penny is usually worth 1 cent, maybe 2 cents to someone filling a date collection. But if the coin is uncirculated, meaning it was never used in everyday commerce and still has its original shine, values can rise significantly. In mint state condition, these coins can sell for anywhere from a few dollars to over $10 depending on their quality and eye appeal. But error coins change the story completely. Double die examples of the 1997 D penny have sold for anywhere from $30 to over $150, depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. Stronger doubling and sharper surfaces bring higher prices. Off-center strikes have sold at auction for $50, $100, and sometimes more, especially if the date and mint mark remain visible. Collectors prize coins where the error is dramatic, but the identifying features are still intact. Broad strikes and die break varieties have sold in the $40 to $200 range, depending on severity and visual appeal. Some dramatic die breaks, especially those that appear like cracks across Lincoln's face, have drawn strong bidding from error collectors. And pristine, professionally graded 1997 D pennies in top condition have reached auction prices exceeding $200 in rare cases, especially when certified as near-perfect examples. These aren't everyday prices, but they show something powerful. Even a modern penny can become a serious collectible under the right circumstances. So how can you tell if your 1997 D penny is something special or just another coin from loose change? First, look closely at the mint mark. A real 1997 D penny will have a small d below the date. No mint mark would mean Philadelphia, not Denver. The letter should look clean and properly shaped, not scratched or glued on. Fake mint marks do exist, though they are rare for modern pennies. Next, inspect the letters and numbers. Use a magnifying glass or your phone camera. Look for doubling, not blurry shadows, but clear separation in the edges of letters, especially in Liberty and In God We Trust. True doubled dies show rounded, raised doubling that looks like part of the original design, not flat or scratched. Check the rim and shape. If the coin looks wider than normal, missing part of its design, or oddly shaped, it may be a broad strike or off-center strike. Weigh the coin if possible. A normal 1997 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, that could indicate a minting error or unusual planchet. Also examine the surface. Genuine mint errors appear smooth and natural, not damaged or scraped. Post-mint damage, like being run over by a car or caught in machinery, can look dramatic but holds no collector value. If you believe you found something unusual, consider having it evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or submitting it to a professional grading service. Authentication can make a huge difference in value and credibility when selling. Now here's something surprising. Even though billions of 1997 D pennies were made, most have already disappeared from circulation. They're sitting quietly in jars, drawers, old piggy banks, or forgotten coin collections. And because people assume modern pennies are worthless, many valuable errors are never discovered. Collectors often say the most exciting finds happen not at auctions, but at kitchen tables, where someone pours out a jar of spare change and suddenly notices something that doesn't look quite right. Another fascinating detail is that 1997 was part of the final stretch before the Lincoln Memorial design was retired. Just over a decade later, in 2009, the reverse design changed to commemorate Lincoln's life, and then again in 2010 to the Union Shield design. That makes the 1997 D penny part of the closing chapter of a long-running American coin design, something collectors appreciate for historical continuity. There's also the human side of this coin. Every penny minted in 1997 passed through countless hands. Some were used in grocery stores, vending machines, toll booths, and tip jars. Some were saved by children, carried in wallets, or tossed into fountains. Each coin carries invisible stories of everyday American life. Collectors love the 1997 D penny not because it's ancient, but because it represents how modern coins can still surprise us. It proves that rarity isn't always about age, it's about circumstance. A tiny mistake during production can turn an ordinary object into something special, valuable, and meaningful. This coin also appeals to beginner collectors. It's affordable, easy to find, and full of discovery potential. You don't need expensive equipment or rare access, just patience, curiosity, and a careful eye. That accessibility is part of its charm. Even experienced collectors enjoy searching through rolls of pennies for 1997 D varieties, hoping to find doubling, cracks, or off-center strikes. It's one of those coins that reminds people why coin collecting can feel like treasure hunting, Because sometimes, treasure really is hiding in plain sight. And here's one more surprising detail. Some collectors specialize entirely in modern errors, and for them, coins like the 1997 D penny are far more exciting than centuries-old gold pieces. Why? Because the hunt is real. The coins are still out there, and every unopened roll or jar could hold something no one has seen yet. So the next time you come across a handful of pennies, take a closer look. That worn copper surface might be hiding a mint error, a doubled die, or a rare strike that collectors would gladly pay for. And even if it's not valuable, you'll still be holding a piece of American history, a tiny object that traveled through time, commerce, and human hands. The 1997 D Lincoln penny reminds us of something powerful. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in the ordinary, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. And who knows? The next time you hear the soft clink of coins hitting a table, one of them might not just be spare change. It might be a story. It might be a discovery. It might even be a treasure. So before you dismiss that penny in your pocket, take another look. Because history, rarity, and hidden value sometimes arrive in the smallest forms, and the 1997 D Lincoln penny is living proof of that. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that most people would ignore, only to discover it might be more special than you ever imagined. Not because it's old, not because it's gold, but because of something it doesn't have. Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary but holds secrets collectors quietly search for. At first glance, the 2002 Lincoln penny seems just like millions of others. It shows Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, and the familiar copper color most Americans recognize instantly. But some of these coins were struck without a mint mark, and that small missing detail changes the entire story. For everyday people, it's just a cent. For collectors, it can be a clue to history, rarity, and sometimes surprising value. To understand why this coin matters, we need to travel back to the year 2002. The United States was entering a new century, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies every year to meet everyday demand. These coins were used for groceries, vending machines, parking meters, and loose change across the country. Most people never thought twice about them. But behind the scenes, the Mint was operating several facilities, including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each mint usually adds a small letter under the date to show where the coin was made. Denver uses a D, San Francisco uses an S, and Philadelphia, traditionally, uses no mint mark at all. That's why the 2002 no mint mark Lincoln penny is officially a Philadelphia coin, even though the mint didn't stamp its location on it. This tradition goes back decades. For most of U.S. coin history, Philadelphia didn't use a mint mark on circulating coins. So when collectors see a penny without a letter under the date, it almost always means it came from Philadelphia. But here's where things get interesting. In 2002, billions of pennies were produced, but not all of them were equal in quality, condition, or striking accuracy. Some came out flawless. Others came out with errors. And a very small number ended up becoming highly desirable to collectors. Let's talk about the coin itself. The 2002 Lincoln penny features the classic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, designed by Victor David Brenner. This design has been used on U.S. pennies since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. On the back of the 2002 penny is the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, making this one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. In terms of metal, the 2002 penny is not pure copper like older pennies. Instead, it's made of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982, when rising copper prices made it too expensive to produce pennies out of mostly copper. So while it still looks copper, it's actually about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper on the surface. It weighs about 2.5 grams and has a diameter of 19 millimeters. To most people, it feels just like any other modern penny. But collectors know that condition and errors can turn ordinary coins into something much more special. So why would anyone care about a 2002 no-mint mark penny? The answer lies in rarity within condition and mistakes. While billions were made, very few survive in perfect, uncirculated condition. Even fewer have unusual errors that make them stand out. And in the world of coin collecting, small differences can mean big changes in value. One of the most desirable versions of this coin is a 2002 penny graded in mint state 67 or higher by professional grading services. That means the coin looks almost exactly as it did the day it left the mint, with no visible wear, sharp details, and strong shine. Coins like this are extremely hard to find because most pennies go straight into circulation and get scratched, worn, or damaged within weeks. Finding a 2002 no-mint mark penny in near-perfect condition today is like finding a needle in a haystack. But condition isn't the only thing collectors look for. Errors are another big reason this coin can be valuable. Some 2002 pennies were struck with off-center designs, meaning the image is shifted toward one side. Others show double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially in the date or lettering. There are also examples with clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a metal cutting error, and broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a proper collar, causing it to spread wider than normal. These mistakes happened during the minting process and escaped quality control, making them rare and collectible. Now let's talk about real-world value. In everyday circulated condition, a 2002 no-mint mark penny is usually worth just 1 cent. That's the reality. But in uncirculated condition, especially if graded by a professional service, the value can increase significantly. High-grade examples have sold for $10, $20, $50, and in some cases, over $100, depending on demand and quality. Error versions can sell for much more. Some off-center strikes and dramatic errors have sold for several $100s at auction. Exceptional examples with strong doubling or rare minting flaws have crossed the $1,000 mark in private sales. These aren't common results, but they show that even modern pennies can surprise collectors. And what makes it even more exciting is that these coins are still out there. Unlike rare 1800s coins that only exist in museums or private collections, 2002 pennies are still found in circulation, coin jars, drawers, and inherited collections. That means anyone could potentially discover one. So how do you tell if your 2002 no-mint mark penny is real and possibly valuable? First, check the date and mint mark area. Under the year 2002, there should be no letter. That confirms it's a Philadelphia issue. Next, look closely at the condition. Is the coin shiny with sharp details? Are Lincoln's hairlines clear? Is the Lincoln memorial on the back crisp and well-defined? Coins with heavy scratches, dark stains, or worn surfaces are usually only worth face value. Then, inspect the lettering and numbers. Use a magnifying glass or phone camera zoom. Look for doubling in words like Liberty, In God we trust, or the date itself. Doubling that looks thick, rounded, and clearly separated can indicate a true mint error, while flat, shadow-like doubling is usually just machine doubling and doesn't add value. Also check if the design is centered. If part of the coin's image is missing or shifted dramatically, that's another sign of a mint error. Weight can also help. A normal 2002 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, it could be an error or damaged coin. But remember, damage after leaving the mint doesn't add value. Collectors want errors that happened during production, not coins that were bent, drilled, or altered later. Let's talk about some fun facts that make this coin even more interesting. The Lincoln penny is the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. Before 1909, American coins used symbolic figures like Lady Liberty instead of presidents. The Lincoln cent was introduced to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, and it completely changed U.S. coin design traditions. By the time 2002 rolled around, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for over 90 years, making it one of the most recognized coins in American history. Another surprising detail is that even though modern pennies are mostly zinc, their copper coating can sometimes peel or bubble due to manufacturing defects. These blistered or split plating errors are more common in post-982 pennies, including 2002 examples. While minor versions aren't very valuable, dramatic examples with large peeling areas can attract collector interest and sell for more than face value. Collectors also love this coin because it represents the end of an era. The Lincoln Memorial reverse design, seen on the 2002 penny, was replaced in 2009 with a series of special designs honoring Lincoln's life, and then again in 2010 with the Union Shield reverse. That means the 2002 penny is part of the final stretch of the memorial design, making it nostalgic for many collectors who grew up seeing it in circulation. Another reason collectors appreciate the 2002 no-mint mark penny is accessibility. Unlike rare gold coins or early copper cents that cost thousands just to own, this coin can be found in pocket change. That makes it exciting for beginners. It turns everyday coin searching into a treasure hunt. You don't need expensive equipment, deep knowledge, or large investments. Just patience, curiosity, and a good eye. There's also a psychological appeal. Finding value in something most people overlook feels rewarding. It transforms an ordinary object into something meaningful. That's one reason modern-era coins have become so popular. They remind us that rarity doesn't always mean ancient. Sometimes it means unnoticed. Let's look at a real-world example. A 2002 no-mint mark penny, graded mint state 67 red by a major grading service, sold at auction for over $100 due to its nearly perfect condition and strong luster. Another example with a dramatic off-center strike sold for several $100s because the date and mint area were still visible, making it more desirable. A double-die reverse variety, where parts of the Lincoln Memorial lettering showed strong doubling, sold privately for over $500. These results aren't guaranteed, but they show what's possible when condition and rarity come together. Of course, not every 2002 penny is worth more than face value. Most aren't. But the excitement comes from knowing that a few are, and you won't know unless you look. So what should you do if you think you've found something special? First, don't clean the coin. Cleaning can reduce value instantly by scratching the surface or removing original luster. Instead, store it in a soft coin flip or small plastic bag. If the coin looks unusually sharp, shiny, or shows clear errors, consider having it evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. They can confirm authenticity and condition and help you understand its potential value. Even if your coin turns out to be worth just a few cents, the process of learning and searching is part of the fun. Coin collecting isn't only about money. It's about history, design, craftsmanship, and the stories behind everyday objects. The 2002 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a perfect example of that. It's a coin that most people never notice, yet it carries decades of tradition, modern minting technology, and the possibility of surprise. Collectors love this coin today because it sits at the crossroads of accessibility and discovery. It's modern enough to be found easily, yet old enough to show up in high-grade condition only rarely. It invites beginners into the hobby while still offering challenges for experienced collectors. And most of all, it reminds us that value isn't always obvious at first glance. So the next time you receive change at a store, empty your pockets or open an old jar of coins, take a second look at those pennies. Check the date. Look for the missing mint mark. Study the details, because hidden among millions of ordinary coins could be a 2002 no mint mark Lincoln penny that tells a story far bigger than its size. And that's the real magic of coin collecting. Not knowing what you'll find, but knowing that something unexpected might be waiting. A single cent, a missing letter, a small detail that turns an ordinary moment into something memorable. And who knows? The next 2002 penny you pick up might not just be spare change. It might be your entry into a world of hidden history, quiet rarity, and everyday treasure.